Okay, so the last couple of days or week or two, we've been talking about solidity. Tonight, I'm going to get back to looking at ink, which we use on substrate-based chains, and I'm looking at two of their more interesting examples that they provide. So let's get started. The first one I'm going to have a look at is another version of flip. We're very familiar with flip. You basically can flip a boolean from 0 to 1, and those are the calls. Well, we now have what's called trait flip. And all a trait is, it's essentially like an interface in Java. You see here how you define flip, but you don't implement anything. Here, what you do is you actually say that you are now going to implement flip. So you have as we had before, we have two different constructors, one with nothing passed to it, one with an initialization variable. We have the messages, and of course you have to use this annotation. You also use the annotation for the storage, where you're holding your values. And so the main difference here is the concept of implementing a trait, or an interface, if you will. The second example is one we haven't looked at before, called GiveMe, which is essentially an example of how to do a transfer in ink. One interesting thing here is they use what they use this Clippy. Clippies are essentially like lint and C. They look for things that aren't cool in your code. So in this case, it's saying don't allow a new without a default. It'll complain. Again, it's a contract. It's not storing anything, so it's just an empty bracket here. But of course, the interesting thing is the GiveMe, and it transfers value to, in the GiveMe, the actual GiveMe method, which transfers tokens to the caller. So it's passing in self, which is like this in Java, the current object, and unbalance. And then the first thing is the if the value, if there are not, transfers back to the caller. So the caller calls this and saying, if we don't have enough in our wallet, it's going to say insufficient funds. And now we're going to give it to the caller. So it's saying transfer from the caller. So this is how you pull up the caller in ink, and you're saying give them this value. And at that point, there is a concept of below subsistence threshold. Let's see if they talk about that. Here, in case the requested transfer value had brought the contract's balance below the subsistence threshold, and it'll fail the transfer. So essentially what you're doing, what you have to do in any of these calls, you check to make sure you have enough to make the transfer. And here's the added thing saying, well, yeah, you may have enough, but you may be left with so little, we can't do it. So self, and again, we saying transfer from this contract to the caller some amount of coin. They also have a very interesting method here, and this is interesting. They use the payable, which we saw in solidity, basically saying that it can receive value. Same thing as in solidity. And let's see, so was it, let's see, true if the token amount which the contract received with this call was 10. So I guess if someone transferred to this contract and you're checking was the transferred balance equal to 10. So that it's interesting that it uses the payable, and I would have to check what selector is in this case. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I think we've seen some very interesting comments. Certainly some similarities with solidity, the necessity of a payable, of course, the checking the value. Now, of course, they don't have the nice requireds in here, but this will work. And it also has this way of checking for a subsistence threshold. So hopefully this kind of contrasting with what we've been seeing been helpful, and if it has, please give me a like, and please subscribe if you want to see more, and ring the bell so you'll get notified, and I will speak to you next time.